walked into the ballroom like he owned the place. $2,000 suit, Rolex catching the chandelier light, and hanging off his arm, a woman half his age in a dress that left nothing to the imagination. Marcus Webb had been waiting for this moment for months. The most exclusive corporate event of the year, an invitation-only dinner hosted by Titan Industries, the company that had just acquired his struggling firm and saved him from bankruptcy. He wanted everyone to see how well he was doing. He wanted everyone to see his young, beautiful girlfriend. And most of all, he wanted word to get back to his ex, the woman he had left 3 years ago because she was, in his words, to focus on her career, to be a real wife. What Marcus didn't know was that word wouldn't need to travel anywhere, because standing at the head table, wearing a stunning black gown and a name tag that read CEO, was the woman he had thrown away like garbage, and she had been waiting for this moment too. This is a story about karma, about patience, and about what happens when a man flaunts his mistress in front of the wrong woman. But before we dive in, I want to see something. Drop a comment right now telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Last video I had people commenting from Kenya at 2 a.m., Philippines at 5 a.m., London at midnight. This community is spreading across the globe, and it amazes me every single time. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and let's get into this story. 3 years earlier, the apartment was quiet except for the sound of Elena Vasquez packing boxers. She moved methodically, wrapping dishes in newspaper, folding clothes into suitcases, dismantling 12 years of marriage one cardboard box at a time. Her hands were steady. Her eyes were dry. She had cried all her tears months ago, back when she still thought the marriage could be saved. The front door opened. Marcus walked in, not looking at her. He went straight to the refrigerator, grabbed a beer, and leaned against the counter. "You're still here," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. "I'm leaving tonight," Elena replied, not looking up from the box she was taping shut. "I just need to finish packing the kitchen. Take whatever you want. I don't care." Elena paused. She looked at the man she had married when she was 25 years old, the man who had seemed so charming, so ambitious, so full of promise, the man who had slowly, systematically, made her feel like she was never enough. "I'm only taking what's mine," she said quietly. "I don't want anything from you." Marcus laughed. It was a cold sound, empty of any real humor. "That's good, because you're not getting anything. You signed a prenup, remember? You walk away with nothing." "I remember. And yet you're still leaving." Marcus shook his head in mock bewilderment. "I don't understand you, Elena. I gave you everything. This apartment, the cars, the vacations. All you had to do was be a wife. Cook dinner, look pretty at parties, support my career. And you couldn't even do that." Elena's hands tightened on the tape dispenser. "I have my own career, Marcus." "You have a job," Marcus corrected. "There's a difference. You sit in a cubicle and push papers for some tech startup that'll be bankrupt in 2 years. That's not a career. That's a hobby." Elena said nothing. There was nothing to say. She had tried explaining to Marcus 100 times that her work mattered to her, that she was good at it, that she had dreams beyond being his accessory at cocktail parties. He never listened. He never cared. The real reason she was leaving wasn't her career. It was the other woman. Elena had found out 3 months ago. Text messages on his phone, credit card receipts for hotels he had never mentioned, a perfume smell on his shirts that wasn't hers. Her name was Brittany. She was 24 years old, a junior sales associate at Marcus's company. She had been sleeping with Elena's husband for almost a year. When Elena confronted Marcus, he didn't apologize. He didn't beg for forgiveness. He didn't even try to deny it. "Ablamade, what did you expect?" he had said. "You're never home. You're always working. A man has needs, Elena. If you can't meet them, someone else will." That was the moment Elena's heart had finally broken. Not because of the affair, but because she realized that the man she had loved for 12 years had never really existed. A was a maske, performance, and behind the mask was someone cruel, selfish, and utterly without remorse. So she had started planning. She had consulted a divorce lawyer quietly, without telling Marcus. She had opened a separate bank account and started saving every penny she could. She had reached out to her network, looking for opportunities, looking for a way out. And then, 6 weeks ago, she had received an email that changed everything. It was from a headhunter, a prestigious one, the kind who only reached out to executives at the highest levels. Dear Senora Vasquez. The email read, "We are conducting a confidential search for a chief operating officer at a rapidly growing technology company. Your background in operations and strategic planning has come highly recommended. Would you be interested in a conversation?" Elena had assumed it was spam. Her background was in operations, yes, but she was a mid-level manager at a startup. She wasn't C-suite material, but something made her respond. The conversation led to an interview. The interview led to a series of follow-up meetings. And 2 weeks ago, Elena Vasquez had been offered the position of Chief Operating Officer at Meridian Technologies, one of the fastest-growing companies in the country. The salary was 5 times what she was making. The equity package was worth millions. And the woman who hired her, the founder and CEO of Meridian, had said something that Elena would never forget. "I've been watching your career for years," the CEO had said. "You're exactly what this company needs. Someone who knows how to build systems, monarchy people, and stay calm under pressure. Someone who's been underestimated their whole life and is hungry to prove what they can do." Elena had accepted the offer that same day. She hadn't told Marcus. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of knowing that she was landing on her feet. Let him think she was walking away with nothing. Let him think he had won. The truth would come out eventually, but by then, Elena would be so far above him that he would look like an ant. "Is that everything?" Marcus asked, watching her seal the last box. "That's everything," Elena confirmed. She stood up, straightened her back, and looked at him one last time. "Goodbye, Marcus." He didn't say goodbye. He just took another sip of his beer and watched her walk out the door. Elena Vasquez left her marriage with 2 suitcases, 3 boxers, and a secret that was about to make her one of the most powerful women in Silicon Valley. And Marcus Webb went back to watching television, secure in the knowledge that he had won. He had no idea that the game was just beginning. The first year after the divorce was the hardest. Elena moved into a small studio apartment on the outskirts of the city. It was all she could afford on her savings, which amounted to exactly $4,000. Everything she had managed to hide from Marcus over the years. The apartment was tiny. The walls were thin. The neighbors were loud. But it was hers. On her first night there, Elena sat on the floor, surrounded by boxers, and cried. Not because she missed Marcus. She didn't. She missed the life she thought she was going to have. The stability, the security, the illusion that everything was going to be okay. But by morning, the tears were gone. Elena had work to do. Her new job at Meridian Technologies started on a Monday. She arrived an hour early, wearing her best suit, carrying a notebook filled with ideas she had been developing for years, but had never been allowed to share. The CEO of Meridian was a woman named Victoria Okafor, Nigerian-American, Harvard MBA, known throughout the industry as someone who could spot talent before anyone else. Victoria had built Meridian from nothing. She had started with a laptop and a dream, and now she was running a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She was everything Elena wanted to be. On Elena's first day, Victoria called her into her office. "I hired you because I see something in you," Victoria sighed. "Something that reminds me of myself 20 years ago." Elena sat up straighter. "You've been held back," Victoria continued. "Someone told you that you weren't good enough, and you believed them. I can see it in the way you carry yourself. The way you hesitate before speaking in meetings. The way you apologize for taking up space." Elena felt her face flush. "I'm working on that," she said quietly. "I know you are," Victoria replied. "That's why I hired you, because the people who have something to prove are the ones who work the hardest." She leaned forward. "I'm going to push you, Elena. I'm going to give you responsibilities that scare you. I'm going to put you in rooms where you feel like you don't belong, and you're going to rise to every single occasion." She smiled. "Because that's what I did. And I recognize the fire in you." Victoria was true to her word. Within 3 months, Elena was leading her first major project. Within 6 months, She was promoted to senior vice president. Within a year, she was being discussed as a potential successor. Alina worked constantly. She was the first one in the office every morning and the last one to leave every night. She read everything she could get her hands on. She took courses on leadership, finance, negotiation. She built relationships with every department, learning how each piece of the company fit together. She made mistakes, every on dose, but she learned from each one. She asked for feedback. She took criticism without becoming defensive. She got better. And slowly, the voice in her head that sounded like Marcus started to fade. You'll never amount to anything began to be replaced by look at what I've accomplished. You're not smart enough became a solve that problem. No one will ever take you seriously transformed into these people respect me. It wasn't a sudden transformation. It was gradual. 1,000 small victories that added up to something bigger. After 2 years, Victoria called Elena into her office again. I'm stepping back. Victoria sighed, not retiring, but transitioning to a chairman role. I want to spend more time with my family, do some board work, maybe write a book. Elena felt her heart sink. Victoria had been her mentor, her champion, her proof that women like her could succeed. I need someone to take over as CEO, Victoria continued. Someone who knows this company inside and out. Someone who has the respect of the team. Someone who has something to prove. She smiled. I'm recommending you. Elena stared at her. Me? I've only been here 2 years. 2 years in which you've accomplished more than most executives do in a decade. Victoria countered. You turned around 3 failing divisions. You brought in our biggest client. You've built a leadership team that would follow you anywhere. She leaned forward. The board will have questions. There will be skeptics, but I've already spoken to the major shareholders. They trust my judgment. Victoria stood up and extended her hand. Congratulations, CEO. Elena took her hand, and for the first time in years, she believed she deserved it. The board approved Elena's appointment the following month. The press coverage was mixed. Some outlets celebrated her as a rising star. Others questioned whether she was ready. A few made snide comments about her being Victoria's pet project. Elena ignored all of it. She had a company to run. Her first year as CEO was challenging. There were crises after crises. A major client threatened to leave. A key product launch was delayed. 2 senior executives quit to join competitors. Elena handled each problem with the same approach. Stay calm. Gather information. Make a decision. Take responsibility for the outcome. Slowly, the company stabilized. Then it started to grow. Elena hired new talent. She expanded into new markets. She invested in research and development that paid off in innovative products. By the end of her 2nd year as CEO, Meridian's revenue had doubled. By the end of her 3rd year, it had tripled. The same press outlets that had questioned her appointment were now writing profiles about her leadership style. Business schools were using her as a case study. She was being invited to speak at conferences around the world. And through it all, Elena never forgot where she came from. She remembered the woman who had packed boxers in an apartment, believing she would never amount to anything. She remembered the voice that told her she was worthless. She used that memory as fuel. Not to prove Marcus wrong. She had stopped caring about his opinion long ago. She used it to prove herself right. When Titan Industries came calling with an acquisition offer, Elena was ready. She knew her worth. She knew Meridian's worth, and she wasn't going to accept anything less. The negotiations took 6 months. Elena walked away from the table twice. The second time, Titan's board panicked and gave her almost everything she asked for. The acquisition made headlines. $2 billion. The largest exit in the company's history. Elena's personal share was over $100 million. But the money wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that Elena Vasquez, the woman who had been told she would never survive without her husband, had just proven to the entire world what she was capable of. And somewhere in a failing marketing company across town, Marcus Webb read about the acquisition and felt something he had never felt before. Fear. Because he suddenly realized that the woman he had thrown away was now one of the most powerful executives in the industry, and his struggling little company had just been acquired by her conglomerate. 3 years later, the ballroom of the Rosewood Hotel was a masterpiece of understated elegance. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Tables draped in white linen held centerpieces of white roses and flickering candles. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Waiters in black tie moved through the crowd carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. This was the annual Titan Industries Partners Dinner, the most exclusive corporate event in the city. An invitation to this dinner meant you had arrived. It meant you were somebody. The dinner was hosted by Titan Industries, a massive conglomerate that had been acquiring promising companies across multiple sectors for the past 2 years. Tonight's event was a celebration of their most successful acquisition to date, a technology company called Meridian Technologies. Meridian had been acquired by Titan 6 months ago in a deal worth $2 billion. The acquisition had made headlines not just because of the price tag, but because of who had negotiated it. Elena Vasquez. In 3 years, Elena had risen from coup to CEO of Meridian. Under her leadership, the company had tripled its revenue, expanded into international markets, and developed proprietary technology that had attracted the attention of every major player in the industry. When Titan came calling with an acquisition offer, Elena had played hardball. She had walked away from the negotiating table twice. She had demanded terms that made Titan's board nervous, and in the end, she had gotten everything she wanted. The acquisition made her $100 million richer. It also made her the CEO of Titan's entire technology division, overseeing not just Meridian but a dozen other companies that Titan had acquired. Tonight's dinner was, in many ways, her coronation. Elena stood near the head table, greeting guests as they arrived. She wore a stunning black gown that hugged her figure, her dark hair swept up in an elegant twist. Diamond earrings caught the light when she moved. She looked every inch the powerful executive she had become. But inside, she was nervous. Not about the dinner. Not about the speeches she would have to give. Not about the executives and board members she would have to charm. She was nervous because of the guest list. 6 months ago, when Titan acquired Meridian, they also acquired several smaller companies. One of those companies was Web Consulting, a struggling marketing firm that had been on the verge of bankruptcy before Titan swooped in. Web Consulting was owned by Marcus Webb, her ex-husband. Elena hadn't known about the acquisition until after it was complete. Titan bought companies the way some people bought groceries, dozens at a time, bundled into package deals. Web Consulting had been buried in a larger acquisition, just one name on a list of 50. When Elena saw his name, she had felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge, just a cold, distant recognition that the universe had a sense of humor. She had debated whether to attend tonight's dinner. She could have made an excuse, sent a representative, claimed a scheduling conflict, but that would have been cowardly, and Elena Vasquez was done being a coward. She would attend the dinner. She would give her speech. She would shake hands and make small talk. And if she happened to run into her ex-husband, she would be polite, professional, and utterly indifferent. That was the plan. Anyway, what Elena didn't plan for was Brittany. The first sign that something was wrong came at 7:15 p.m. Elena was speaking with a group of board members when her assistant, a sharp young woman named Priya, appeared at her elbow. "Ms. Vasquez," Priya whispered. "There's a situation." "What kind of situation?" "One of the guests from the Web Consulting acquisition is here. Marcus Webb. He brought a Elena's expression didn't change. "That's fine. Guests were allowed to bring partners." "The +1 is causing a scene," Priya continued. "She's very loud. She's been making comments about the other guests, and she's been telling everyone who will listen that her boyfriend is about to be a very important person at this company." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" "Apparently, Mr. Webb has been telling her that his company is the most valuable part of the acquisition, that he's going to be promoted to a senior executive position, that he has a direct line to the CEO. Priya hesitated. "She's also been asking where the CEO is. She wants to introduce herself." Elena felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years, a spark of something that might have been amusement. "Well," she said slowly, "I suppose I shouldn't keep her waiting." She excused herself from the board members and walked toward the main entrance of the ballroom. She saw him before he saw her. Marcus was standing near the bar, a champagne glass in one hand and his other arm wrapped around a young blonde woman in a tight red dress. The woman was Brittany, older now, but unmistakably the same woman from the text messages Elena had discovered 3 years ago. Marcus looked almost exactly as Elena remembered, a little heavier, a little grayer at the temples, but still carrying himself with that same arrogant swagger, that same absolute confidence that the world revolved around him. He was talking loudly to a small group of people who looked like they desperately wanted to escape. Web consulting is the crown jewel of this whole deal, Marcus was saying. Without my client relationships, Titan would be nothing. I've already talked to the higher-ups about my role going forward. Big things are coming. Very big things. The people he was talking to nodded politely and edged away. Brittany was tugging at his arm. Babe, when are you going to introduce me to the CEO? I want her to know who I am. Patience, sweetheart. The CEO is probably busy kissing up to the board. These corporate types are all the same. No vision. No personality. Just spreadsheets and buzzwords. He laughed at his own joke. I'll tell you what. Though, Marcus continued, once I'm running the technology division, things are going to change around here. I'll bring some real energy to this company. Some real entrepreneurial spirit. Elena had heard enough. She walked toward them, her heels clicking on the marble floor. The crowd seemed to part for her unconsciously, people stepping aside without quite knowing why. Marcus didn't notice her approach. He was too busy pontificating to his shrinking audience. The problem with big corporations, Marcus was saying, is that they forget what made them successful in the first place. They get complacent. They missed a web. Elena's voice cut through his monologue like a knife. Marcus turned. For a moment, he didn't recognize her. His eyes swept over her gown, her diamonds, her perfectly styled hair. He saw a powerful woman, an executive, someone important. Then recognition hit. His face went white. Elena. Hello, Marcus, Elena said pleasantly. It's been a while. Marcus's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Brittany looked between them, confused. Babe, who's this? Marcus didn't answer. He was staring at Elena like he was seeing a ghost. Elena turned to Brittany with a polite smile. I don't think we've been introduced. I'm Elena Vasquez. She extended her hand. CEO of Titan Technologies. Brittany's jaw dropped. The champagne glass in Marcus's hand began to shake. CEO. Marcus finally managed. You're the CEO? That's right, Elena confirmed. I oversee all of Titan's technology acquisitions, including... She paused for effect. Web consulting. The color drained from Marcus's face completely. Brittany grabbed his arm. Marcus, he hissed. You said your ex-wife was some loser who couldn't hold down a job. You said she was probably working at a coffee shop somewhere. I am standing right here, Elena pointed out mildly. Brittany's face flushed. I didn't mean... She started. It's fine, Elena interrupted. I'm sure Marcus told you a lot of things over the years. Some of them might even have been true. She turned her attention back to Marcus. I understand you've been telling people about your upcoming promotion. About your direct line to the CEO. Marcus swallowed hard. I was just... he stammered. It was networking. You know how it is. You have to sell yourself. Elena nodded thoughtfully. The thing is, Marcus, I've reviewed the financials for web consulting. All of them. She let the words hang in the air. Would you like to know what I've found? Marcus said nothing. His face had gone from white to gray. I found, Elena continued, a company that has been hemorrhaging money for 5 years. I found client relationships that are hanging by a thread because of poor communication and missed deadlines. I found employee satisfaction scores in the bottom 10% of all Titan subsidiaries. She tilted her head. I also found some interesting expense reports. Business dinners that seem to have taken place at some very expensive restaurants. Hotel stays in cities where web consulting has no clients. Gifts purchased on the company card that were never logged as client entertainment. Marcus's hand was shaking so badly now that champagne was spilling onto the floor. Those expenses were legitimate, he said weakly. Were they? Elena asked. Because I have a forensic accounting team that would love to discuss that with you. In fact, they're already preparing a report for the board. You can't do this, Marcus whispered. You're just doing this because of our history. This is personal. Elena laughed. It was a genuine laugh, warm and almost sympathetic. Marcus, she said, nothing about this is personal. I don't think about you enough for it to be personal. You're just another failing acquisition in a portfolio of hundreds. The only reason we're having this conversation is because you decided to walk into my event and loudly announce that you're about to be promoted. She leaned in slightly. You're not being promoted, Marcus. You're being investigated, and depending on what the forensic team finds, you may also be prosecuted. Marcus's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the ballroom. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Brittany stepped away from Marcus, like he was contagious. You told me you were successful, she hissed. You told me this was your big break. I am successful, Marcus protested, but his voice was weak. This is a misunderstanding. Elena is just jealous because I left her. Elena raised an eyebrow. You left me, she repeated slowly. Is that the story you've been telling? She turned to Brittany. For the record, I left him after I discovered he had been cheating on me for almost a year with you. Brittany's face went crimson. That's not, she started. It's fine, Elena said again. Truly? You did me a favor. If Marcus hadn't been so terrible, I never would have had the motivation to build the career I have now. She looked at Marcus with something that might have been pity. You told me I was wasting my time on my job, that I would never amount to anything, that I should focus on being a wife instead of having ambitions. She gestured around the ballroom. How do you think that advice aged? Marcus said nothing. He stood there, broken champagne glass at his feet, his girlfriend backing away from him. 200 of the most powerful people in the industry watching the scene unfold. Elena straightened her posture. I have a dinner to host, she said. Security will show you out. Please don't attempt to contact me or anyone else at Titan. All further communication should go through your lawyer. She turned to Brittany. It was lovely to meet you. I hope you have a backup plan. And with that, Alina Vasquez turned and walked back toward the head table. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. Behind her, she heard Brittany's voice rising in anger. You told me she was nobody. You told me you were going to be rich. You lied to me about everything. And Marcus's voice, pleading, pathetic. Baby, wait. I can explain. This isn't what it looks like. Elena didn't look back. She had wasted enough of her life looking back. The security team arrived within seconds. 2 large men in dark suits appeared from the edges of the ballroom, moving toward Marcus with the practiced efficiency of professionals who had handled difficult situations before. Is there a problem here? One of them asked, though his tone made it clear he already knew the answer. No problem, Elena said smoothly. Mr. Webb and his guest were just leaving. Please escort them out. You can't do this, Marcus said, his voice rising. I know people here. I've connections. I'll go to the press. Elena turned back to look at him one final time. Marcus, she said, her voice almost gentle. You don't have connections. You have people who tolerated you because they thought you might be useful someday. That usefulness has expired. She gestured to the security team. Please make sure Mr. Webb doesn't cause any more disturbances. As the guards moved toward Marcus, he backed away, hands raised. This isn't over, he said. You haven't heard the last of me. Actually, Elena replied. I have. All future communications will go through my legal team. Don't contact me directly. Don't contact anyone at this company directly, and don't even think about going to the press. I have a team of lawyers who specialize in defamation cases, and they're very expensive and very motivated. She turned to Brittany, who was standing frozen, mascara starting to run down her cheeks. I hope you find someone who treats you well, Elena said. Genuinely. Everyone deserves that. It was perhaps the cruelest thing she could have said, because it wasn't cruel at all. It was sincere. The security guards took Marcus by the arms and began walking him toward the exit. He went quietly now, the fight having gone out of him. Brittany followed, keeping as much distance from him as possible. As they were led through the ballroom, every eye in the room tracked their progress. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Everyone had seen what happened. By tomorrow, everyone would know. Marcus Webb, the man who had spent years telling everyone how successful he was, had just been humiliated and fired by his ex-wife in front of the most powerful people in the industry. It would be the only thing anyone talked about for weeks. The doors closed behind them. Elena took a deep breath, and then she smiled and walked back toward the board members, ready to continue being a CEO. The rest of the dinner proceeded as if nothing had happened. Marcus tried to protest, tried to demand to speak to someone in charge, but the security guards were impassive. They had dealt with difficult guests before. A desperate man in an expensive suit was nothing new. Brittany had already ordered an Uber and was standing outside the hotel, refusing to look at Marcus. "We can work this out," Marcus was saying. "This is just a setback. I have connections. I can fix this." "Fix what?" Brittany snapped. "Your ex-wife is the CEO. Your company is being investigated. You're about to lose everything." She laughed bitterly. "I can't believe I wasted 2 years on you. You told me you were going places. You told me we were going to have a penthouse and a vacation house and a yacht. We can still have all of that," Marcus insisted. "With what money?" Brittany shot back. "Your company is failing. You probably have fraudulent expenses on your record. You're going to be lucky to stay out of jail." Aruba pulled up. "Don't call me," Brittany said, opening the car door. "Don't text me. Don't try to find me. We're done." She slammed the door. The car pulled away. Marcus stood alone on the sidewalk, his expensive suit suddenly feeling too tight, his Rolex suddenly feeling like a shackle. He had walked into that ballroom thinking he was on top of the world. Now he was standing on the street, watching his girlfriend drive away, knowing that his ex-wife was inside, living the life he had always wanted for himself. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating. Inside the ballroom, the dinner continued as if nothing had happened. Elena gave her speech. She thanked the board for their confidence in her leadership. She outlined her vision for Titan's technology division. She was charming, articulate, commanding. No one would have guessed that she had just confronted her ex-husband for the first time in 3 years. After the speech, people lined up to congratulate her. Board members, executives, investors. Everyone wanted a moment with Elena Vasquez, the woman who had turned a struggling startup into a billion-dollar acquisition. Elena smiled and shook hands and said all the right things. But inside, she felt strangely empty. She had imagined this moment so many times. Seeing Marcus again, watching his face when he realized how successful she had become, witnessing his humiliation in front of everyone he had tried to impress. In her imagination, it had always felt triumphant, victorious. But the reality was different. She didn't feel victorious. She felt tired. Marcus's opinion of her didn't matter anymore. It hadn't mattered for years. She had built her success for herself, not to prove anything to him. And seeing him broken and pathetic in that ballroom hadn't made her happy. It had just reminded her of all the years she had wasted trying to make him love her. But it had also shown her how far she had come. The woman who had packed boxers in that apartment 3 years ago would never have believed this was possible. She had been beaten down, convinced that she was worthless, certain that Marcus was right about her. And now she was standing in a ballroom full of powerful people, and they were all looking at her with respect. That was worth more than any revenge. After the dinner wound down, Elena found herself on the hotel terrace, looking out at the city skyline. The noise of the party was muffled out here. The air was cool and clean. She replayed the confrontation in her mind. Marcus's face when he recognized her. The way his voice had cracked, the desperate excuses, the pathetic attempts to salvage his dignity. She felt nothing. That surprised her. For years, she had imagined this moment. She had rehearsed what she would say. She had fantasized about his humiliation. And now that it had happened, she just felt empty, not triumphant, not vindicated, just done. Marcus was her past, and the past couldn't hurt her anymore. She heard footsteps behind her. Quite a performance tonight. Elena turned. A woman about her age was walking toward her, holding 2 glasses of wine. I'm Diana Chun, the woman said. I'm on Titan's board of directors. I know who you are, Elena replied, accepting one of the glasses. You were the deciding vote on my acquisition deal, Diana smiled. And I have to say, you were worth every penny we paid. That speech was masterful. You had the whole room eating out of your hand. She came to stand beside Elena at the railing. I also saw what happened with your ex-husband, Diana added. Word travels fast in that ballroom. Elena sighed. It wasn't planned. I didn't know he would be here until the last minute. I believe you, Diana said. And for what it's worth, you handled it perfectly. Professional. Controlled. Devastating. He never stood a chance. She took a sip of wine. I pulled his file after the scene. His company is a disaster. We're going to have to write off most of the acquisition value. I know, Elena said. I've already started restructuring plans. We'll salvage what we can and let the rest go. Including him. Elena nodded. He'll be terminated by end of week. The forensic accounting team found enough problems to justify it. This isn't personal. It's just business. Diana was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you saw him tonight, walking in with that woman, what did you feel? Elena considered the question carefully. I expected to feel angry, she admitted. Or maybe satisfied, vindicated, even. I spent 3 years imagining what I would say to him if I ever saw him again. And I felt nothing. Elena shook her head slowly. Absolutely nothing. He was just a stranger. Someone I used to know. Someone who doesn't have any power over me anymore. Diana nodded. That's how you know you've really healed, she said, when their presence doesn't trigger anything at all. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city lights twinkle below. You know, Diana said eventually, I did some research on you when we were negotiating the acquisition. Your career trajectory is remarkable. Coup in 6 months. CEO in 18 months. You turned that company around faster than anyone thought possible. Elena shrugged. I had a lot to prove. To him. Elena thought about it. At first, maybe I wanted to show him he was wrong about me. I wanted him to see what I could become without him holding me back. C'est pas aussi. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about him. I stopped working to prove something and started working because I loved it. Because I was good at it. Because I had ideas that deserved to be heard. That's the difference between revenge and growth, Diana observed. Revenge keeps you tethered to the person who hurt you. Growth sets you free. Elena raised her glass. To growth, then. Diana clinked her glass against Elena's. To growth. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Marcus Webb was formally terminated from Titan Industries 3 days after the dinner party. The official notice was delivered by courier to his apartment, along with a detailed accounting of the irregularities found in his expense reports. The forensic accounting report revealed years of expense fraud, totaling over $300,000. Fake client dinners, personal trips, charged to the company. Gifts for girlfriends, listed as client entertainment. But the fraud wasn't the only problem. The investigation had also uncovered systematic mismanagement. Clients who had been neglected, employees who had been driven out, projects that had been sabotaged by Marcus's ego and incompetence. Web consulting had been failing for years. Marcus had been hiding it with creative accounting and optimistic projections. Now, with Titan's forensic team going through everything, there was nowhere left to hide. The district attorney's office took over from there. Marcus hired a lawyer. An expensive one, but expensive lawyers couldn't manufacture evidence that didn't exist. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Emails, receipts, testimony from former employees who were only too happy to share what they had witnessed. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Marcus tried to blame everyone else. His accountant, his assistant, his ex-wife. Somehow, the jury didn't believe him. Guilty on 12 counts of fraud. Guilty on 3 counts of tax evasion. Guilty on 1 count of embezzlement. The judge sentenced him to 18 months in a minimum security facility, 3 years of probation after release. Full restitution required, which would take decades, given how much he now owed. His assets were seized. The fancy apartment that he had once shown off to clients, the luxury car that he had leased with company funds, the Rolex collection that he had been so proud of, all of it was liquidated to pay back what he owed. When the marshals came to take him away, Marcus looked around the courtroom. He was hoping, perhaps, to see Elena there, to see some sign that she cared about his fate. She wasn't there. She was in Tokyo, closing a deal that would expand Titan's presence in the Asian market. She didn't even know the verdict had come in until her assistant mentioned it in passing the next day. "Oh," Elena had said. "Good." And then she went back to a meeting. Brittany, predictably, was long gone. She had moved on to a new boyfriend within weeks of the dinner party. Someone who actually had the money and status that Marcus had only pretended to have. The last anyone heard, she was posting Instagram photos from a yacht in Monaco. She had never looked back. And Elena kept building. She expanded Titan's technology division into Asia and Europe. She acquired 3 more companies and turned them all profitable within a year. She became a sought-after speaker at industry conferences, a regular feature in business magazines, a name that everyone in the tech world knew. But her greatest achievement had nothing to do with business. His name was James. They met at a charity gala, 1 year after the fateful dinner party. Elena was there representing Titan, writing a large check to a foundation that built sustainable housing in underserved communities. She was standing near the dessert table, trying to avoid a particularly aggressive investor who had been following her around the room, when a man appeared beside her. "You look like you could use some backup," he said, "or at least some better access to the mini cheesecakes." Elena looked at him. He was tall, with warm brown eyes, and gray starting to show at his temples. He wore a suit that was well made, but not flashy. His smile was genuine, not the practiced charm she had become so used to in the corporate world. "I'm fine," Elena said automatically, "just taking a break. From the guy who's been circling you like a shark." The man nodded toward the investor, who was clearly trying to work up the courage to approach again. "I can tell him you're with me, if you want. Completely platonic rescue mission. No strings attached." Elena laughed, despite herself. "That would be suspicious," she said. "We don't even know each other." "I'm James," the man said, extending his hand. "James June. I teach sustainable architecture at the university. I'm here because my department received a grant from this foundation last year, and they invited me to say thank you." Elena shook his hand. "Elena Vasquez." "I know," James said. "You're kinda famous." Elena felt her guard going up. "Oh," she said coolly. "I read about you in a business magazine," James explained. "Something about transforming the technology industry. I didn't understand most of it, but you seemed impressive." He smiled. "I don't really follow the business world. I mostly think about buildings and how to make them not destroy the planet." Elena found herself relaxing. "That sounds more important than what I do," she admitted. "Probably not," James said. "But it's what I'm good at. We all have our thing, right?" They talked for 3 hours. Not about business, not about deals or strategies or the things Elena usually talked about at these events. They talked about architecture, about sustainability, about James's work designing affordable housing that was also environmentally responsible. They talked about books they loved and places they wanted to travel and the weirdest thing they had ever eaten. James told her about the summer he spent in Thailand learning traditional building techniques. Elena told him about the apartment she had lived in after her divorce, how small it was, and how much she had loved it anyway. When the gala ended, James walked her to her car. "I'd like to see you again," he said, "if that's something you would be interested in." Elena hesitated. "You should know," she said. "I'm not exactly a normal person. My schedule is insane. I travel constantly. I have baggage from a previous marriage that sometimes surprises me." "I don't need normal," James replied. "I need interesting, and you're the most interesting person I've met in a very long time." He pulled out his phone. "Here's my number. No pressure. Call me if you want to get coffee sometime, or dinner, or just walk around and talk about sustainable building materials. I'm flexible. Elena took the phone and typed in her number. There, she said. Now you have mine too. James smiled. Good. I'll text you a picture of my cat when I get home. Fair warning, she's not photogenic, but she has a great personality. Elena laughed. I look forward to it. She drove home with a strange feeling in her chest. It took her a while to identify it. It was hope. Their first date was coffee at a small cafe near the university. James arrived 15 minutes early and was so nervous he spilled his drink on himself. Elena arrived exactly on time and pretended not to notice the wet spot on his shirt. They talked for 4 hours. The cafe had to ask them to leave at closing time. Their second date was dinner at a restaurant James loved. Tiny place. Only 8 tables. Family. The food was incredible, and the portions were enormous. Elena ate more than she had eaten in months. James beamed, like he had given her a gift. Their third date was a walk through a park James was helping to redesign. He showed her the plans, explaining how each element would contribute to the ecosystem. Elena listened, fascinated. She didn't understand all the technical details, but she understood passion, and James had it in abundance. After 3 months, Elena realized she was in love. After 6 months, James told her he felt the same way. After a year, he proposed. It wasn't elaborate. No skywriting or flash mobs or surprise trips to Paris. They were sitting on the couch in Elena's apartment, eating takeout and watching a documentary about ocean conservation, when James muted the TV. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, he said. I don't have a ring yet, because I wanted to ask you first. I figured you'd have opinions about what you wanted. Elena laughed and cried at the same time. Yes, she said. Absolutely yes. They went ring shopping the next weekend. Elena picked something simple, a single diamond on a platinum band. James tried to talk her into something larger, something more impressive. I don't need impressive, Elena told him. I just need you. The wedding was small, just family and close friends, in a garden by the ocean. Elena wore a simple white dress that she had found in a boutique while on vacation. It wasn't designer. It wasn't expensive. It was just beautiful. James cried when he saw her walking down the aisle on her mother's arm. Elena's sister was her maid of honor. James's brother was his best man. Diana Chun gave a reading about love and second chances. The vows were simple. No elaborate poetry, just honest promises between two people who had found each other later in life and knew how precious that was. When the officiant pronounced them married, the small crowd cheered. Elena looked at James, at his tear-stained face and his ridiculous smile, and knew that she had finally found her home. The reception was held in a tent on the same grounds. There was dancing and toasts and a cake that James had insisted on making himself. It was slightly lopsided, but it tasted incredible. At one point, Elena stepped outside to get some air. Diana found her on the terrace, looking out at the ocean. You look happy, Diana said. I am, Elena replied, genuinely, completely happy. It suits you. They stood in silence for a moment. I was thinking about Marcus earlier, Elena admitted. Not in a sad way. Just wondering what he's doing right now. He's in prison, Diana said, probably eating terrible food and wearing an orange jumpsuit. Elena shook her head. That's not what I mean. I was thinking about how different my life would be if I had stayed with him, if I had believed him when he said I would never amount to anything. Diana considered this. You wouldn't be here, she said finally. You wouldn't have built what you've built. You wouldn't have met James. I know, Elena said. That's what I keep coming back to. Everything that hurt me led me to everything I love. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense, Deanna replied. That's what growth looks like. Elena turned back toward the tent, where James was waiting for her, where their friends and family were celebrating, where the rest of her life was waiting to begin. Let's go dance, she said. 2 years after the wedding, Elena retired from Titan Industries. Not because she had to. She could have stayed for decades, but she had realized that there was more to life than corner offices and board meetings. She and James moved to a small town on the coast. They bought a house with a garden and a view of the ocean. Elena started consulting for nonprofits, using her business skills to help organizations that were actually trying to make the world better. James continued teaching, but only part-time. The rest of his hours were spent on passion projects, designing sustainable housing for underserved communities. They had breakfast together every morning. They took walks on the beach every evening. They built a life that was small and quiet and absolutely perfect. One morning, Elena was reading the newspaper when she saw a familiar name. Marcus Webb released from prison after serving 80-month sentence. There was a small photo. Marcus, looking older and grayer and diminished, standing outside a correctional facility with a single duffel bag. Elena looked at the photo for a long moment. Then she turned the page. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel satisfaction. She didn't feel anything at all. Marcus Webb was a stranger. Someone she used to know. Someone who had once had power over her but didn't anymore. Elena finished her coffee, kissed James goodbye, and went out to work in her garden. The sun was warm. The ocean sparkled in the distance. The flowers she had planted were starting to bloom. And Elena Boscas, the woman who had once been told she would never amount to anything, was finally, completely, at peace. 5 years later, Elena stood on a stage in front of 2,000 people. The conference was called Second Chances. It was designed for people who had faced major setbacks, failures, devastating losses, and built new lives from the wreckage. Elena was the closing keynote speaker. The auditorium was packed. 2,000 people had paid significant money to be there. They came from every background imaginable. Executives who had been fired, entrepreneurs whose businesses had failed, professionals who had been through divorces, bankruptcies, health crises. All of them were looking for hope. Elena walked onto the stage. The applause was thunderous. She waited for it to quiet, looking out at the sea of faces. Each one represented a story, a struggle, a reason for being here. 15 years ago, she began. I walked out of my marriage with 3 boxers and 2 suitcases. She paused. That's not quite accurate. I didn't walk out. I was pushed out. My husband had been having an affair for almost a year. When I confronted him, he didn't apologize. He blamed me. She let the words hang in the air. He told me I was the problem. He told me that my focus on my career was destroying our marriage. He told me that I would never survive without him. She clicked to the next slide. A photo of a small, cramped apartment. This is where I lived after I left. 400 square feet. Thin walls. A view of a parking lot. She smiled. It was the happiest I had been in years. Laughter from the audience. Because for the first time in 12 years, no one was telling me I wasn't good enough. No one was tearing me down. I was alone, and it was terrifying, but it was also free. She clicked again. A photo of Meridian's office building. 3 years later, I was the CEO of this company, a company that would eventually sell for $2 billion. She clicked again. A photo of the Titan headquarters. 5 years after that, I was running the technology division of one of the largest conglomerates in the world. She clicked. One more time, a photo of her and James on their wedding day. And somewhere in there, I met this guy who makes terrible puns and builds sustainable housing and has never once made me feel like I wasn't enough. The audience cooed, but here's the thing, Elena continued, her voice becoming more serious. This isn't a story about success. She stepped out from behind the podium. Success is easy to talk about. We love success stories. They make us feel good. They make us believe that everything works out in the end. She shook her head. But success isn't the point. Success is just a side effect. She walked to the edge of the stage. The point is, the moment when you decide to stop believing the voices that tell you you're worthless. She looked out at the audience. My ex-husband spent 12 years telling me I would never amount to anything. And I believed him. For 12 years, I let his opinion of me become my opinion of myself. She paused. The divorce didn't fix that. Getting a new job didn't fix that. Becoming CEO didn't fix that. She leaned forward. What fixed it was waking up one day and realizing that his opinion never mattered, that I had been giving power to someone who never deserved it, that I was the only one who got to decide my worth. She straightened. That's the lesson. Not revenge. Not proving anyone wrong. Not achieving success to rub it in someone's face. She smiled. The lesson is that you get to define yourself. Not your ex. Not your parents. Not your boss or your critics, but the voice in your head that sounds like everyone who ever hurt you. You should let the word echo through the auditorium. Somewhere out there, someone is telling you that you're not good enough. A partner. A parent. A boss. A voice in your own head that you've listened to for so long you think it's telling the truth. I need you to know something. She looked directly into the audience. They're wrong. They've always been wrong. And someday, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe 5 years from now, you're going to build something that proves it. Not to them. They don't matter.
We need to talk.
To yourself, the audience erupted in applause. Elena waited for it to subside.
This can't go on.
Now,
What do
she
you
said with a
mean?
grin. Let me tell you about the time my ex-husband brought his mistress to a company dinner I was hosting and had no idea I was the CEO. Laughter filled the auditorium, and Elena Vasquez, the woman who had once been told she would never amount to anything, told her story to 2,000 people who would never forget it. Somewhere in a minimum wage job in a city far away, Marcus Webb was watching the live stream of the conference. He had seen the announcement that Elena was speaking. He had debated whether to watch. Some masochistic impulse made him click the link. Now he sat in a small apartment, watching his ex-wife command a stage in front of thousands of adoring fans. She looked radiant, powerful, happy. Everything he had told her she could never be. He watched the whole speech. He watched the standing ovation at the end. He watched Elena smile and wave and walk off stage like she owned the world. Then he closed his laptop. He went to the window and looked out at the street. He thought about the man he had been 15 years ago. The arrogance. The cruelty. The absolute certainty that he was better than everyone else. He thought about all the people he had hurt. Elena, certainly. But others too. Employees who had quit because of him. Friends who had drifted away. Family members who had stopped calling. He had been so certain that he was winning. Now he understood the truth. He had never been winning. He had been losing. Slowly. One relationship at a time. One act of cruelty at a time. Elena hadn't destroyed him. He had destroyed himself, and she had simply gotten out of the way. Marcus turned away from the window. He went to his desk, where a notebook sat open. He had been writing lately. Not memoirs or excuses. Just reflections, trying to understand how he had become the person he was, trying to imagine who he might become if he really changed. He picked up a pen and started to write. Maybe it was too late. Maybe the damage was done. Maybe he would never be anything more than a cautionary tale. But for the first time in his life, Marcus Webb was trying to be honest with himself. And that was something. Elena flew home the next day. James picked her up at the airport, holding a bouquet of wildflowers from their garden. "How did it go?" he asked. "Good," Elena said, taking his hand. "I think I helped some people." "You always do," James replied. They drove home as the sun set over the ocean. Elena looked out the window at the life she had built. The garden they had planted together. The house they were slowly renovating. The neighborhood where everyone knew their names. She thought about the woman she had been 15 years ago. Broken. Terrified. Convinced she was worthless. That woman would never have believed this was possible. But this woman knew the truth. Anything was possible. You just had to believe you deserved it. And that's the story of how a man flaunted his mistress at a company dinner, only to discover that the CEO hosting it was the wife he had thrown away like garbage. Here's what I want you to remember from this story. The best revenge isn't watching someone fail. It isn't public humiliation or financial ruin or any of the dramatic moments we fantasize about. The best revenge is becoming so completely yourself that the people who doubted you become irrelevant. Marcus spent 12 years tearing Elena down. He spent 12 years convincing her she was worthless. And in the end, she built a life so beautiful that she forgot he existed. That's real power. That's real victory. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if your ex showed up at your company event with the person they cheated with? Would you have confronted them publicly? or handled it differently? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. If this story gave you that satisfying feeling of karma coming around, smash that like button. It really does help the channel grow more than you know. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story. I've got an absolutely insane one coming up about a woman whose mother-in-law tried to ruin her wedding, not knowing she was about to inherit the family fortune. Trust me, you don't want to miss how that one ends. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.